Today, we're diving deep into a landmark Indian Supreme Court case that all came down to one incredibly painful question. And the answer? Well, it would go on to change the very definition of cruelty inside a marriage. So here's the question at the heart of it all, and it's a tough one. Can the threat of suicide be seen as an act of cruelty so severe that it's grounds for divorce? The case of Pankaj Mahajan versus Dimple Kajal was about to give us a very clear and very powerful answer. But getting to that answer was anything but easy. I mean, look at this timeline. This wasn't some quick legal fight. It was a grueling, decade-long ordeal. They got married in 2000, and the husband filed for divorce just 2 years later. The trial court said yes, divorce granted. But then the High Court said no, reversing the decision. It took until 2011 for the Supreme Court to finally settle it once and for all. So to really get why the Supreme Court ruled the way it did, we have to go back. We need to unravel the human story here, the actual facts that took this couple from their wedding day to the highest court in the country. The trouble started just a few months into the marriage. According to the husband, the behavior became more and more erratic. We're talking about sudden bursts of hostility, really strange actions like combing her hair for the entire day, and then moments of intense aggression. It got physical, too, escalating to a point where she allegedly pushed him down the stairs, which actually left him with a fractured forearm. And this crisis, it wasn't just contained between the couple, it spilled over into the entire home. The court heard testimony that household duties were completely ignored, and tragically, this also extended to their baby. The allegations included neglect, leaving the infant with neighbors for even basic care, and one really disturbing incident of waking the sleeping child just to slap her for no reason at all. Now, you might be thinking, this is just one person's side of the story. But it wasn't. There was a key eyewitness, their landlord, who lived in the same building. He testified that he personally heard the wife make these threats, saying things point blank like, "I want to die," and "I should commit suicide." And the threats? Well, they weren't just words. This next part became a massive piece of evidence. The wife herself, in a sworn legal document, an affidavit, admitted to attempting suicide by trying to jump off a terrace. This admission completely changed the game. It wasn't just an allegation anymore. It was a documented fact. So with such a dramatic set of facts, you'd think this would be a pretty open and shut case, right? Nope, not even close. What happened next was this long, confusing journey where different courts looked at the very same evidence and came to completely opposite conclusions. Okay, so check this out. First, the trial court reviews everything. The violence, the neglect, that suicide attempt, and says, yup, that's cruelty, and grants the divorce. Makes sense. But then, the case goes to the High Court on appeal. They look at the exact same facts and deny the divorce, completely overturning the first ruling. This major disagreement is what sent the case all the way to the top. So, what was going on? How could two courts be so far apart? Well, the High Court basically dismissed the landlord's testimony, calling it hearsay. The Supreme Court shot back, saying, no way, the guy lived in the same house, he's an eyewitness. The High Court also got hung up on whether her mental illness was proven to be incurable. The Supreme Court took a more real-world approach. They said, look, after years of intense treatment, the harmful behavior didn't stop. That's what matters here. And as for her own affidavit, the High Court tried to explain it away, but the Supreme Court saw it for what it was, a really powerful admission of what was happening. And so, after all those years of legal whiplash, it was finally time for the last word. The Supreme Court stepped in to settle this, not just for this one marriage, but to bring some real clarity to the law on cruelty and mental health. The first thing the court did was to nail down what mental cruelty actually means in the eyes of the law. And it's not about the normal ups and downs of marriage. They defined it as a pattern of behavior that's so bad it becomes genuinely harmful or injurious to live with the person, causing a level of mental agony that goes way beyond everyday stress. Now, on the sensitive issue of mental health, the court was very clear. They noted that 4 different psychiatrists had confirmed a diagnosis of either schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. But, and this is key, they said that even though the condition might be treatable, years of intensive treatments, including electroconvulsive therapy, hadn't stopped the harmful behaviors. Because of that, they decided the husband could not be reasonably expected to live under that kind of constant threat. And then, they delivered the single sentence that would echo through courtrooms for years to come, the line that became a new legal precedent. Giving repeated threats to commit suicide amounts to cruelty. So why is that such a big deal? The court's reasoning was really profound. They explained that for the person on the receiving end, a threat of suicide isn't just a threat. It creates this constant state of mental torture and fear. It makes a peaceful life totally impossible. It's a psychological burden that's just unbearable. And that, they said, is the very definition of mental cruelty. You say this ruling wasn't just about ending one marriage. It was about creating a new, clear legal standard for every case that would come after it. It fundamentally changed how the law looks at these incredibly painful situations. And you can literally see its legacy in action. The 2011 Times Pankaj Mahajan decision has been cited over and over. In 2016, the Supreme Court themselves used it to grant a divorce in a case where a wife had poured kerosene on herself. Jump ahead to 2023, and the Delhi High Court is directly applying the same principle in a case involving threats to jump from a balcony. It became a truly powerful legal tool. So what's the ultimate takeaway here? The court drew a really important line in the sand. It established that while the law absolutely must have compassion for someone suffering from mental illness, that illness doesn't become a free pass for behavior that is cruel to a spouse. Everyone has a right to be safe, both physically and mentally, in their own marriage. And that brings us to the big question that this case leaves us with, one that's really worth thinking about. This ruling gave us a legal answer, but the ethical puzzle is still there. How do we, as a society and through our laws, keep trying to find that incredibly difficult balance between compassion for mental health struggles and a person's fundamental right to be safe and live without fear?